Hayom Harat Olam. Standing tall in a little bit, buoyed and bolstered by the sound of the shofar, we will proclaim today is the day of the world's birth. Because who does not celebrate a birth? Who does not celebrate potential and possibility, new life and new beginnings? Who does not celebrate a birth? Almost 9 years later, I can tell you it's complicated. It's complicated for the 1 in 8 couples, and that's only hetero couples, so say nothing of same-sex couples, single parents by choice, who struggle with infertility, who watch as friend after friend after friend announces a pregnancy, who buy gift after gift after gift for baby showers, who send meal after meal after meal for new parents. I think it's actually complicated for all the people who feel that they have been left behind, who feel like they are being lapped in life's milestones, who feel stuck and frustrated and alone. 9 years later, I can tell you, it was complicated for me. It was complicated for Sarah, whose pain and rage and frustration over her infertility sets off the chain of events that brings us to Hagar, alone in the wilderness, vulnerable and scared. And certainly it was complicated for Hagar, whom Christian theologian Rachel Held Evans of blessed memory describes as an enslaved woman forcibly impregnated. Alone in the wilderness, vulnerable and scared, she becomes, as Evans notes, the only person in all of Scripture who had the audacity to give God a new name. And it was complicated for Hannah, whose story we will read in just a moment. Hannah, who with her husband goes to Sheol year after year after year to offer their sacrifices, and year after year after year, her husband divides the sacrifices between his 2 wives, giving a double portion to his beloved, childless Hannah. And year after year after year, this small act, with the best of intentions, only serves as salt in Hannah's wounds, a constant reminder of that which she doesn't have. So year after year after year, those offerings come to represent not their love, but the endless negative tests, the months and months of tears and anger and frustration. Some of you know that my son's middle name is Samuel, the very name that Hannah gives to her son. And at his Brit Milah, almost 9 years ago, we shared this. We went back and forth on S names until one night, right around Rosh Hashanah, your mom, that's me, came out of the shower and said, "It has to be Samuel." And we looked at that tiny little 8-day-old. And we said, "You see, Jacob Samuel, we read a story on Rosh Hashanah, a heartbreaking story with a happy ending. The story of Hannah, who desperately wants a child and cannot conceive. And like a lot of people in that room, your mom and dad, Jacob, lived part of that story. And like Hannah in the Rosh Hashanah Haftarah, your mom and dad, each in their own way, prayed for you. And so, at long last, we too have a son, and we too have given you the name Samuel, you the fulfillment of so many hopes and dreams. Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the day of the world's birth. Because our story had a happy ending. But what about bleak beginnings, or the place so many of us dwell, the messy middle? Of those, Rav Tali Adler wrote this year, we tend to focus on the happy ending of Hannah's story. A woman without children pours her heart out to God and her prayers are answered. But it's worthwhile to slow down and look at who Hannah is while she's still in that broken place. Someone looking around at everyone else living the life she thought she was supposed to be living. Watching everyone else partake of the sacrifices while she can't eat a single bite. Finding herself alone in a room, trying to find her own way to God. Because everything that Shiloh, not your daughter, but the place, offered in the form of ritual meant nothing to her. So maybe you're here, watching other families and people and wondering why yours does not act that way or love that way or share the holiday that way. Maybe you're joining us from home because you are sick or you are scared or because you don't want to see what feels like parades of people whose lives seem perfect. Maybe you're waiting for test results or processing news that wasn't what you wanted it to be. Maybe the words and melodies and feelings of today feel foreign and disconnected from your life, your experience, your stories. Maybe the world right now does not seem full of potential and possibility, but of anxiety and uncertainty, of doors closed behind. Maybe this year, for whatever reason, you don't want to stand up and say, Hayom Harat Olam, today is the day of the world's birth. So Rav Adler continues, that's what we read on Rosh Hashanah. And part of that maybe is because the rabbis knew there would always be Chanas. There will always be those of us who feel like we are being left behind. There are always those of us who are longing to connect and just can't do it in the ways that are being offered. Sometimes all we can do is move our lips silently in the words we feel called to say in a corner of the room where no one is watching. And on those years, Chana's story is there to remind us that that is enough. The stories of the High Holy Days are the stories of women waiting. They are the stories of women longing. And they are the stories of women crying and praying and hoping. They are their stories and they are our stories. Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the day of the world's birth. And like all birth, it is complicated and it is messy and it is what we long for and it is what we fear and it is what we want and cannot have. And it is our hopes and our dreams and our pains and our suffering. And whatever it is for you this year, it is enough.